We are back with Dynasty Decisions, episode number 107, breaking down 7 of your Dynasty Fantasy Football rosters. What should you do with your draft picks, trade discussion, everything under the sun relating to Dynasty Fantasy Football. You're going to want to stick around right to the end. Let's hit the intro. All right, so we are now into the first team of the video. This comes from Bryce. Unfortunately, we wanted to get to some free submissions. The motherfuckers ended up populating our submissions list. We'll probably run another episode of Dynasty Decisions in the coming days so that we can clear out some of the queue of the paid submissions to get to some free ones, because I know a lot of you guys have been waiting since like June of last year or whatever. Apologies for that. But of course, if you want your team submitted and broken down right away, Flock Fantasy is the easiest way to do that. Of course, you do need to use promo code FSE. So Bryce's team, he is a Mother Flocker tier subscriber here. 10 team, 4 point per passing touchdown, PPR, 1 quarterback league. Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. Really unfortunate that this is not a super flex format, but that is the quarterback core you got going on there. James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams, Jalen Warren, and others at running back. Justin Jefferson, ARSB, Puka Nacua, Brandon Ayuk, Zay Flowers. Dog, this team is ridiculous. TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta. This team is ridiculous. You also have the 102 somehow in this class. 2 late second rounders in 2025, 3 ones in 2026 as well. Unfortunately, Bryce, we are not going to spend a lot of time on this team because I really don't want to annoy the people in the comment section who haven't gotten their teams broken down yet when you are dealing with a monster like this. So quick questions he's got here. No recent trades. Everything was done in season. His questions are, given his receiver room already, do I still take Harrison at 102? Also, he has to drop 2 players, so who should he drop? And then he also said he wants to thank us for all of our help. And this was his first year playing Dynasty, made like 7 trades throughout the season to end up with this final product. So I would say it looks like you're playing with a bunch of raging casuals on your hand right now. What are your thoughts on what he should do with the 102? And then we'll get to the players that he should drop.
So is this a super flex then? Like it says it's a 1 quarterback league, but if you're saying Marvin Harrison at 102, like is the guy just like not taking Marv at 101? Like I'm kind of confused in that regard. Like obviously
maybe he just forgot to fill out that it was a super flex, and it is a super flex. Regardless, if it's a super flex or a 1 quarterback league, your quarterback core is loaded in either case. And if Marvin is available at 102 in either case, then yes, I would take Marvin Harrison Jr. The thing that stands out to me with this team is getting a hammer at running back. I would say would probably be the thing that I would do next if you can, because James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams, Jalen Warren, those guys are pretty good, but you have so much excess talent with elite dynasty wide receivers. Like with Marvin coming into this team, you have my dynasty wide receiver 3 in Justin Jefferson, 4 in Marvin Harrison, 5 in Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7, I think, with Puka Nacua, 6 with Garrett Wilson, and 10 with Brandon Ayuk. So you got 6 dynasty wide receiver 1s here on this roster. If you wanted to go out and buy Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, all it should cost you realistically is that 102 pick. If you don't want to get Marvin Harrison, you probably get something on top of that. Or you want to move off of Puka Nacua because you're worried about his rookie year production maybe not translating. Brandon Ayuk coming off of a monster season. You could move off of him and try and go after one of those running back talents. Again, normally I would say hold the wide receiver, don't go after the running back. But given the roster that you have at hand here, I actually think you're so loaded at wide receiver in a start 9 league that you actually could go after a running back.
Instead of moving one of those top end wide receivers, like in this spot in a 10-team start 9 league, you have so much freaking depth to play with. Target the guy that's got a needle-moving stud running back, like you said, whether that's Bijan, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs. See if you can do it with multiple parts, whether that's, Zay Flowers plus Deshaun Watson can get you up to one of those guys, whether it's, maybe Hawkinson plus one of those guys. Like, you have so many freaking players to play with.
26 picks, too. You could even take James. Right? Let's say it costs you, for Bijan Robinson, it costs you James Cook, a 2026 projected late first, and Zay Flowers, and you get Bijan Robinson in a 3rd round pick back. Like, honestly, you're at a point with this roster that you can afford to give up value for the production pieces that you're going after. Studs are going to make the difference in this league format specifically. It's a 10-team league. It's a start 9, and your team is already loaded to the point that you have no concerns about depth whatsoever. So whatever it costs you to go up and get Bijan, to go up and get Jahmyr Gibbs, one of those guys, definitely go and target those managers because you have the firepower to be able to go acquire them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, this is the type of situation in a start 9, 10-man league where Go have some fun. Go buy some hammers, man. You have so much liquidity on this team, so much depth on this team, and go take advantage of it. If people really think depth really matters, like it's a 12-team start 11 league, then take that, use that to your advantage. Like I said, like if you can package multiple parts, get some hammers, absolutely. The other question you have here is, you have to drop 2 players. Who should you be? I'm sure you're going to be on the same page here, but Xavier Gibson and Jake Bobo are the clear 2.
Yep, absolutely. As much as, Jake Bobo, I guess, showed something like Tillman, Washington, and Palmer were all drafted wide receivers. Those other 2 guys, I believe, were both undrafted. So I would say that would be the direction that I would go. But again, I don't want to spend very much time on this team because the answer to all of your questions, Bryce, is nothing else matters because you're going to probably win the championship anyway because your team is absolutely loaded here. So let's get on to the next team in the video, which is from Flett here. 12-team PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown. Half tight end premium super flex league. Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Derek Carr. He puts meat here as the thing. I'm assuming that means dog meat or terrible.
Call of Duty map, baby.
Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk, Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, Josh Downs, and some other guys there. Travis Kelce is the main tight end. Jake Ferguson is the backup. Came in 3rd place this year, evidenced by that 110 overall pick. Very clear that this is the type of team that you're looking to potentially do I want to blow it up? Do I want to go after more competitive assets to try and win? What are your thoughts? I think uniform across the board, you're a competitive roster. You have way too many assets that are in contending windows to try and blow this thing up without knowing, of course, what is the league market? What can you get for Travis Kelce? What can you get for Tyreek Hill? What can you get for Saquon Barkley? Because the second you sell one of those guys, most people are probably assuming that you're going to be rebuilding, and you also are not in possession of your 2025 first anyway. So I lean towards trying to run this back.
Yeah, one more year run back, try to go win that championship, come out on the top, because realistically, like your team, you mentioned you finished 3rd this year with that 110. It should be a strong contender. The thing I may suggest is maybe see if you can take one of those newly signed running backs that signed big deals, apply it to the wide receiver position. Because outside of those top 3, I don't have much confidence in any of those guys. I like Josh Downs, but he's more of a young receiver. I don't expect him to be, a top 24 producer this year. Adam Thielen, I would be surprised, especially with the addition of Deontay Johnson, potentially with the draft, that they add another receiver for him to replicate what he did last year. I would take, because a running back, man, you have 4 guys that I feel really confident in: Barkley, Jacobs, Jones, Mostert. Jones and Mostert is probably not going to net you a lot of liquidity on the market. So if you can take either Barkley or Jacobs, pending the league market, if they value those guys highly at the running back position, if they just value the running back position at the top end highly, if you can transition them, let's say Josh Jacobs, can you get, a veteran producing wide receiver? Like, insert top 15-ish type of wide receiver here. Top 20?
Yeah, like Stephon Diggs or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, maybe
I personally
wouldn't
wouldn't go that direction. I think
Really?
that your running back core is set the way it is. What I would do instead is use your draft capital to do that, because you have the 110, 210, 410, and 510. So for me, if you're looking for another hammer at wide receiver, I would rather trade the 110 for Mike Evans and maybe another like low-end pick or low-end wide receiver talent on top of Mike Evans, if you think you should get more on top of that than the 110. So for me, we're in peak rookie draft season right now. You're going to be able to buy veterans probably using your draft capital as it stands. People are going to, maybe you have to wait until May to actually do this. But for me, I think I'm okay just selling off the 110 for a veteran right now, because adding, say, Lad McConkey to your team would be great and inject some youth to your team. But you're in like a gotta win it this year window. You have Travis Kelce, who is the definition of a gotta win it this year window player, and also even Tyreek Hill, who's threatened retirement after this season as well. So for me, I'm taking the 110. I'm looking at redraft ADP, who is the highest guy I can get in redraft ADP with the 110. If it's Mike Evans, great. If it's, I don't know, somebody a little bit worse than Mike Evans, Keenan Allen or something like that, and you get something on top of Keenan Allen in return, that's something I'm okay doing as well. 110 is the pick that you need to shop for a veteran player, in my opinion. Spending the 110 in the rookie draft would be not in line with what your team is at and trying to advance your winning window right now.
Even if it costs like Josh Downs plus the 110 and you go a little bit higher, I don't hate that. Like maybe Josh Downs plus the 110. Do you think that can net you, like
Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins?
I was going to say, yeah, like DJ Moore higher.
Yeah, somebody like that. You already have
Collins.
Ayuk, but like maybe somebody's still not bought in on London. You can go after him. Like I would completely forego what you think of value in Dynasty in this team situation. I am betting whatever best fantasy production asset I can get with that 110, mainly at wide receiver, because you're a little weaker there, is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, like obviously you're gonna use the draft capital and like a young player like Downs first, but like once you do that, even it's a start up to 5 wide receiver league. I wouldn't even be opposed to trimming one of the running back if you can get equivalent wide receiver production at that point. Because typically in this situation, I want to be 5 deep, and at this point, I think you're 3 deep at wide receiver.
Yeah, the other thing you could do is if the 110 gets you Mike Evans, hypothetically, 210 might get you, I don't know, somebody, maybe 210 plus Josh Downs gets you Christian Kirk and some other aging wide receiver that helps your
Yeah.
production window. Like anything you could do to advance this starting lineup, redraft roster for this year, that's what you'd have to do. Again, we're not usually in the business of saying that, but given that you're not in possession of your 2025 first, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, a lot of these guys are not going to be very relevant for longer anyway. Come 2025's offseason is when you're going to probably tear this thing down. Yeah, it's going to suck losing out on that value, but you're probably better off pushing your chips into the middle and trying to win because your starting roster, once you add, let's say, a Mike Evans to this team, you add another second tier flex piece wide receiver with the 210 in a trade, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. And I wouldn't be opposed to trading your 2025 capital for more assets, but I would probably wait until midseason to do that. If you suffer some injuries or whatever the case is, come midseason, if the 2025 second gets you Christian Kirk during the year, that's something that I'd be okay doing as well. But your team situation is definitely one that is a contending window. And some of the trades that he ended up making, you guys can see them on the screen here. Sends away Josh Allen, got Joe Burrow and Tyreek Hill. Again, he was a contender. I don't blame this move too much. Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, not a massive difference, definitely a difference. Tyreek Hill is enough of a needle moving asset that I think I'm fine with that. Sold off Dameon Pierce for Aaron Jones.
Solid.
Definitely aged well. At the time, I think that was a little bit of a sketchy move because Dameon Pierce maybe would have given you as much production as Aaron Jones, and also selling a young running back for an old running back is a sketchy move. But for the most part, I think that worked out. And then he sold, I believe, I
It's
think
reversed.
he bought this side. So he got Travis Kelce, Derek Carr, and Jake Browning, sold off Cole Kmet, his 2025 first, Taysom Hill, Romeo Dobbs in a third. So, I mean, the needle moving asset there is Travis Kelce. And then you also got a starting third quarterback, as well as a guy that you were trying to win last year. Jake Browning was a starter at the time, and you had Joe Burrow. Definitely understand the move that you made there. Again, it sucks looking back on it that you gave up your first rounder. Romeo Dobbs is a young-ish, exciting-ish receiver. Cole Kmet getting a quarterback upgrade in the draft with Caleb Williams. But none of these assets help me lose sleep. Like I don't lose sleep at night moving off of any of these minus the first rounder.
Yeah, cool. Late projected 2025 one, the 310. And to be frank, a bunch of fodder gets you 2 pieces that helps you win. Travis Kelce, obviously, the production they gave you down the stretch. And while Derek Carr isn't a needle mover at quarterback, not having a quarterback 3 there, Derek Carr can occupy that spot. Is he the highest upside quarterback 3 in the world? No, but at the same time, solid contending cheap quarterback that you could buy, especially as an add-on basically in this deal. I'm cool with the move that you made, to be honest.
Yeah, and knowing that you're trying to compete again this year, Kelce didn't retire. Derek Carr is back as a starter for the Saints. Maybe they add a receiver or offensive line help in the draft or whatever. So, yeah, definitely a solid move that you ended up making there. Again, the thing that you're going to go end up doing is probably go buy a contending wide receiver. Mike Evans is the guy that stands out to me just off the top of my head, but also Stephon Diggs may be available for the 110. Somebody like that, Deebo Samuel. I guess you have Ayuk already, but anybody in that range that's a competitive high-end redraft asset is what I'd be going to buy with that 110 and maybe another one with the 210 if you can get a cheap deal on somebody that's a flex play to help fill out your wide receiver core as well. So we can move on here to the next team, which is from Austin, who is a Flocker tier subscriber of ours, a 10-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, half tight end premium super flex. Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence as the top guys, JT, ETN, Jacobs, David Montgomery as the top running backs, Steph Diggs, Puka Nacua, Michael Pittman Jr., JSN, Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, Evan Ingram, Michael Mayer, Greg Dulcich. So very well-built team in terms of a competitive roster. 102, I mean, you don't have a quarterback 3 at this point in time, although Marvin Harrison is definitely very, very appealing. That's something that we're probably going to get asked right away. He says, my dilemma is what to do with the 102. Not shocked that he asked that question. What are your thoughts on the team? And then we'll get into some of the questions that he has, some of the trades that he has as well.
Yeah, I think it's a strong roster. Having the 102 this year as well really helps. 10 teams start 9 leagues, so hammers really do matter. And I do think you have ample amount of hammers on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, he's asking what to do with the 102. What are your thoughts on that? Given the roster that he has, are you likely to go with, again, it's a 10-team league, so I don't know. He doesn't mention here that Caleb is going to go 101. It's possible that in a 10-team format, if that guy doesn't need quarterback, he could go Marvin 101, in which case I would probably just take Caleb in his situation. But he does say here,
May
I
Daniels.
assume like when he traded Jamar Chase, which is the trade we'll talk about in a second, he assumed he would be drafting Marvin Harrison to fill that void. So he only traded Jamar Chase as a result of thinking that 102 pick would get him Marvin Harrison. So the trade that he ended up making on November 18th was he sends away the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase stack, ill-advised to be trading them away at that point in time because they were kind of on the low, in my opinion. But you did receive Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown, who signed with the Kansas City Chiefs to upgrade himself, and Christian Kirk lost Calvin Ridley in the process. And he got an early 2024 first, the 102. So Chase versus Marvin Harrison, if you add in Christian Kirk, I think that's probably a wash.
Even
And then you
Marquise.
basically traded Burrow for Trevor Lawrence and Marquise Brown. Again, maybe you lost the straight a little bit, but for the most part, I think you can get there.
Yeah, like as much as I like Christian Kirk, maybe if you had gotten an extra first instead of him, I would be like, okay, you profit an extra first, you downgrade basically from Joe Burrow to Trevor Lawrence, and you basically trade Jamar Chase for Marquise Brown in the 102. I can stomach that. It's not a bad deal. Like I said, it's probably like, a C plus, B minus deal, because as much as I like Christian Kirk, I would have rather have gotten the liquidity, especially in your spot. Stacking up some draft capital, whether it's an extra 2025 pick to add at the deadline, whether that's, you could have gotten a 2024 pick at the time. I would have rather than that. But like I said, I can't really fault the move too much. I understand the rationale, especially when you consider just how well this next move aged. Traded away Raheem Mostert, who was giving you a lot of production, was a top 5 running back in fantasy for the majority of the season, but you buy low on Josh Jacobs, signs this big contract with the Green Bay Packers this offseason, 4 years, $48 million. And although I like Raheem Mostert, I think he could be a solid, 1A, 1B type of 1-2 punch with Devon Achane this year. I'd be extremely shocked if he was an RB1 in fantasy yet again. Josh Jacobs, much younger, and I have a much higher projection for him on the Packers than I do Raheem Mostert on the Dolphins going into next season. So I don't have to explain myself. This is a smash move.
Yeah, he only, it sounds like, made this trade because it was championship week and he got eliminated in the semifinals. And the guy wanted Mostert because Jacobs wasn't expected to play that week. And they both ended up not playing, which is hilarious. So the fact that this guy traded for Mostert and neither of these guys ended up playing is quite hilarious. The other trade that he makes here, he sells off Josh Allen for Anthony Richardson and Puka Nacua. So you inherit a lot of risk in this deal. You sold off one of the safest assets in all of Dynasty, but this could really work out for you because if Anthony Richardson hits, he's going to have immense fantasy value. He's going to be a very high-end startup pick, potentially higher than Josh Allen because of his age. And Puka Nacua, of course, you're buying into what you saw his rookie season. You think he's going to be an elite wide receiver. And again, you kind of reloaded your wide receiver core here because you had some aging guys, Stephon Diggs and, that kind of thing. So overall, all in all with these moves, I think you've done a pretty good job with this roster. I personally would also go with Marvin Harrison Jr.
Easily.
At 102. I think the main reason for that is because with Richardson and Lawrence, you are assuming that those guys are going to be anchors at quarterback. If you need to buy a cheap QB3 because
trade David Montgomery.
Yeah, exactly. Sell David Montgomery for one, or sell, maybe your second midseason gets you Geno Smith because he has a hamstring injury or something like that. Like you have the opportunity to buy a cheap QB3 when you need it. So unless Caleb falls to you at 102, I think you're going Marvin.
Yeah, I mean, even if Caleb, I guess because Marvin would go.
If Marvin went 101, then you kind of be forced
fair.
to take Caleb at that point.
No, that's fair. I was gonna say if you had 101 and you were choosing between Marvin, Caleb in a 10-man start 9 league, when you have Anthony Richardson and Trevor Lawrence, you just take Marvin in that instance. So, obviously 102. Don't overthink it. You said should I look into Mayor Daniels? Absolutely freaking not, man. It's a 10-man league. It's a start 9. If it was like a 12 or 14-man start 11, and you needed that quarterback asset, which you don't really need because you could flip it later on. That's one thing. But even still, man, like I have Marvin Harrison Jr. ranked above Drake May and Jaden Daniels in 12-man leagues. So the fact that this is a 10-man start 9 is really a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think if you galaxy brained a scenario where the Patriots stick and pick at number 3 overall and take Marvin, and the Vikings trade up with the Cardinals and take Drake May, and Drake May is a Viking and Marvin is a Patriot with no real quarterback solution there, maybe you galaxy your brain your way into Drake May having more startup value. But at the same time, we're talking mainly hypotheticals. In most situations, I think Marvin will be the more valuable asset, and he also fits your team a little bit better, especially in the league format specifically that you are in, which is a 10-man league. Quarterbacks are going to lose a little bit of value there. So for the most part, I think you're in a really good spot. You're ready to kind of run this thing back, reload with some young talent, Puka Nacua, Marvin Harrison. You got a little bit younger. This is kind of like a borderline house money team mid-season. If you're at a point where you're really, really performing and JSN maybe is your weak link at wide receiver and people still believe in him, you could sell him for a competitive asset. Whatever the case is, you have a very competitive, ready to win running back core. If your young quarterbacks can hit, you're going to be in a good spot. Maybe you want to buy a quarterback mid-season if you're worried about their production. But as of now, I think I'd be totally fine going in with this core because Jacoby Brissett's probably going to be a starter for the Patriots early on in the year. So you'll have at least a short-term answer at quarterback 3.
I'm past the house money moniker on this team. Like, this should be a contender. Like, realistically, you get Marvin Harrison at 102. You have a starting wide receiver core, can start up to 4 per week of Marvin Harrison, Stephon Diggs, Puka Nacua, and then one of Michael Pittman, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and one of those other options. Not to mention,
you could even consolidate at wide receiver if you wanted to. I mean, Marquise Brown and Deontay Johnson might be on the upswing in terms of value right now. If you could take Marquise Brown and David Montgomery and go get a solid quarterback 3 and a competitive better wide receiver or better running back or better tight end or whatever you need to do, you could always do something like that. But yeah, this team is in pretty good shape. You're a contender.
Can you get like Devontae Adams, Matt Stafford in a piece? Like, can you get like that type of move if you were to move Deontay Johnson, David Montgomery, and maybe a third or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. So you got some flexibility. Again, focus on improving your starting lineup as a contender, especially in a 10-team start 9. You're going to want to have the best starting lineup you can possibly have. We can move on to Eric's team here, which is also a 10-team. I guess it's 10-team video today. Non-super flex as well. So 10 teams start 8. 1 quarterback league. So very, very important that you have studs on your roster. And it looks like you do here with Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, Will Levis, very solid at quarterback. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, 2 of the best running backs in Dynasty with Devon Achane, James Cook, Ramondre Stevenson, very good depth at that position as well. AJ Brown, Drake London, Michael Pittman Jr., Zay Flowers, JSN, Chris Godwin, all those guys. Kyle Pitts, CJ Hawkinson, Dalton Kincaid. Somehow in possession of 1-5, 1-6, and 1-7 in the rookie draft, 204, 207, all of those other picks, and your future draft capital as well. So again, he's was planning on, basically it's the league's 6th year. He's wrapping up his rebuild. He said he's very active in trades, but he stood pat after 2023's rookie draft to avoid swinging too early. So I guess he was in a house money year last year, and he was like, I don't want to shove my chips in. I'm going to just like let and see how this thing plays out, stay the course, trust the process, all that good stuff. Now he's ready to push his chips in. And I agree with you. This is probably the time that you are capable of pushing your chips in. He said his team is actually capped to 24 spots, and he has a lot of draft picks. So he's going to actually have to drop players. So you are in the prototypical consolidate your roster and go get some studs window.
Yeah, I mean, you suggested it right here. Should I try to pry away young proven hammers, Chase, Lamb, Hall, or should I try to move up the draft board? Both, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
those original picks that you have right now, guess what? You have, what is that, 7 picks that you have this year? If you have more than 3 by the end of this cycle, I'll be disappointed, to be honest. Whether that's you moving 105 plus 106 for fucking CD Lamb, whether that's moving, 107 plus 204 plus maybe a roster player, get you fucking Breeks Hall or something like that. Like, just go buy, man. Go buy. Like, realistically, like, not every team in your league is going to be as set up as you are. I was already going to say consolidate because it's a 10-man start 8 league, but with the added bonus that you have to create 7 roster spots, why would you add 7 rookies and have to drop people on the team? Like, yeah, could you argue, okay, drop, Palmer, Wandale, like Kendre and shit, like, sure. But at the same time, if you don't have to drop them because you could just turn them into better players, go do that.
Yeah, this is like, I'm a big Hell's Kitchen fan, and Gordon Ramsay, one of the results of the challenges is he gives you like $5,000 to go spend at a store and buy all the kitchen appliances you can think of. You're not shopping the sales with Gordon Ramsay's money. Like, you have Gordon Ramsay's money stocked up in the cupboard right now. You don't need to shop for buy low candidates. Like, maybe you go after Chase because he's a little bit on the downswing, or maybe you go after Jefferson because he just lost Kirk Cousins or whatever, but you're buying hot ticket, big ticket items with your shopping spree right now. So yeah, go spend these picks on, do you want to go up and get Marvin? Go up and get Marvin. You want to take 105, 107 and Wandale because somebody likes him and go get CeeDee Lamb? Go get CeeDee Lamb. Like, you can have a lot of fun with this. He said, it's very likely I'm going to have to overpay. Who the hell cares, to be honest? Like, I don't care. If you want to go get Sam Laporta because you just want to say that you have the best dynasty tight end and it costs you both TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts to do it, then give them both. Like, I really don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that analogy. Another analogy is like you're hungry for dinner with your girl and you just got your paycheck after the month. You're feeling good. You got some money on you. You're going to take her to McDonald's or you're going to take her to the keg? Go take her to the keg. Go have some fun. Go get some wine. Go get a nice steak dinner, maybe some mashed potatoes on the side. Don't go buy, your junior chicken when you get your paycheck. Go have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, he said, is it better to make the picks, dump the weaker players, and look for trade opportunities midseason? Again, the
Trade right
best
now.
thing you can do is make your starting lineup as good as you possibly can. However you get there, whether it's getting Marvin, whether it's trading for current veterans like Jefferson and Lamb and all these guys, however you get to the point where your starting lineup is so scary that it strikes fear into your opponents, that is how you do it. Whether it's trading picks, trading players, packaging players together, just send offers out. Go after the teams that the teams to target in your league are the guys that have one or two really good players and no depth, because they might be thinking they need depth, even though depth isn't important in this league. So if somebody has CeeDee Lamb and then like a bunch of slappies at wide receiver, go tell him that you're going to give him Drake London, the 107, and Chris Godwin for CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's at the point now where when you meet with your buddies heading into week 1 of the NFL season and one of your buddies sees that you're his fantasy matchup, you want to hear an audible sigh. You want to hear him say, fuck, why am I playing this guy in week 1? Because that's the reaction you should be getting with the assets you have on this team, to be frank. Once you consolidate these players, like you should have a lineup that basically projects for 160 plus points any given week. And I know it's a 10-man start only 8 players getting 160 points seems pretty unreasonable, but you have the cupboards to be able to stockpile.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have some fun with this one. So let's move on to the next team that we got here. That is from Jake here. This is a 12 team, finally, 1 PPR, 1 quarterback league though. So Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, and Aaron Rodgers, kind of all you need. Zach Charbonnet is the prototypical 0 RB, go light at running back guy, because I also have him on a bunch of teams where I have nothing else in the cupboard at running back because he fell in rookie drafts last year. Michael Pittman, Jaden Reed, again, pretty weak at the wide receiver position. Dontavian Wicks and some upside guys there. Kyle Pitts, Michael Mayer. It looks like the cupboards are very stocked, though, in the draft capital department. 101, 201, 202, 203, 208. All these picks this year. He has 3 1s next year, 3 1s in 2026, a bunch of extra seconds, a bunch of extra thirds. So it's very clear that this is a very barren roster that's about to add a bunch of young players to it. This is one of your stay the course teams. Again, it's a 1 quarterback league, so 101 is a very easy decision. You're going to take Marvin with the 101, 201, 202, 203, 208. All these picks this year, you're doing one of 2 things: taking falling values, guys, maybe goes to a bad landing spot, he was a good prospect, you take him at 201, etc. Same goes for all your other picks. Or you punt it into more capital in the future. 208 comes around, somebody wants to give you a random 2025 second for it, take his random 2025 second and build out your stockpile even more, because outside of Anthony Richardson, maybe Kyle Pitts and Michael Mayer is pretty good lockdown tight end core for the long term, Michael Pittman and Marvin Harrison. Outside of that, your all of your players are going to come from the next 3 draft classes.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is maybe see like the volatile pieces that you have on your team. Like let's just say, because Jaden Reed is a guy that I've seen getting a lot of buzz in terms of dynasty recently. We currently have him like as a fringe top 30, top 35 wide receiver, but I've seen people have him like their wide receiver 25 in dynasty. Maybe see if Jaden Reed plus the 202 can net you up to the 106 to take a Dunze, or a Jalen Waddle, or a Nico Collins, or a Rasheed Rice, or Brandon Ayuk. Like, go see if you could make those type of upgrades with the picks that you have this year. Volatile assets, like again, Jaden Reed, I would be expanding my options with that. As much as I like Michael Mayer, because you have Kyle Pitts, maybe Michael Mayer plus one of those picks can net you another stud wide receiver, whether that's, Michael Mayer plus the 201 can get you another one of those, T Higgins plus type of wide receivers. Just go try to take some of the volatile players you have with the picks now and bank on those 2025s and 2026 to fill out your running back core. Because, 2025 in particular, man, you got a fucking loaded class. Ashton Jeanty, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. Like, there's so many names next year. You've done a deep dive on the position to confirm that. We're talking about potentially 5 to 8 guys that can make up your first round of your rookie drafts. That's when you're going to be out of your running backs. And you might ask, well, why don't I add, a couple running backs this year? Because you still want to make sure that your team is in position to get the 101, the 102 next year, because I don't think your team from a production standpoint is ready in 2024, but because you have all those picks stockpiled 2025, 2026, it's going to be a quick turnaround by then too.
Not to mention this year's class is very deep at wide receiver and not at running back. So you can just
Exactly.
take what the class is giving you, which is a lot of falling wide receiver values because people are focused on filling out the running back core most likely in your league. And the
Yeah.
201 should, not maybe have Troy Franklin on the board in a quarterback league, but because Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, and a bunch of other guys went already, he might be there. And you're like, oh, I'll just take the falling value at wide receiver. And generally speaking, this year in particular, the falling value is most likely going to be at wide receiver because the class is very deep, very strong. And I'm projecting everybody as a big amount of draft capital for 15, 20 of these guys. So yeah, you're going to load up your wide receiver core this year, consolidate where you can. Michael Pittman's a little bit older. Maybe you want to get a little bit younger there. You're not going to be competing for the next couple of years. You have a lot of options in terms of what you can do. He also does have a couple trades listed here. Where he sent away on February 1st, he sent away Luke Musgrave, received a second and a third in 2026. Again, people don't care about those picks. Second and a third in 26, they don't give a shit. Luke Musgrave, not that good of a prospect. You already had Pitts and Mayer anyway. Great trade. He also sent away the 105, 204, 2025 second, and Jahan Dotson for Michael Pittman, Wan'Dale Robinson in the 208. So he said, I wanted to pair Michael Pittman with Anthony Richardson. You're not in a position to make acquisitions at this point in time. That 105, 204 second and Jahan Dotson would have served your team a lot more. I get it. He said, I might have overpaid by a second, but I don't think Brian Thomas or whatever wide receiver slots in at 105 will be a reliable fantasy producer. The logic that you approach this trade with is flawed, in my opinion. Yes. 105, you don't want to take Brian Thomas there. That's fine. What you should have done instead is waited till the rookie draft and bought a younger veteran than Michael Pittman Jr. and just held pat. Like, the idea that you needed to buy Michael Pittman to pair with Anthony Richardson is not where your team's life cycle is currently at right now. Your team's life cycle is buy a bunch of picks, go and spend them on a bunch of young players because you're nowhere near the decision point where you need to decide to stack wide receiver and quarterback yet.
100%. And not to mention, as much as I like Michael Pittman, like, you're still dealing with a 26-year-old wide receiver. Like, point blank, man, like, by next year, he's going to be 27. The market value that you paid for him, there was no need because you probably could have gotten him if you wanted to make that stack a lot cheaper next year, man. Like, in terms of the how the dynasty market works, the year older, you're basically paying peak value right now without needing his production this year. So I don't like this move. Like you said, again, I understand you wanted to pair him with A. Rich. Maybe you're a Colts fan as well. You love Michael Pittman. I just don't see the value. And again, even if you are lower on Brian Thomas, you do not view him as the type of reliable
Why didn't
producer.
you trade up in the rookie draft would be my question.
That
105, 204, a second in Jahan Dotson. How does that not get you to 102 or 103 so you can take Neighbors or Odunze?
Exactly that. Or even if it's like, even if you don't believe in Brian Thomas, A, you paid a lot to make this deal done. And B, there's going to be someone in your league where if Brian Thomas goes top 15, top 18 in the NFL draft, is going to value him straight up over Michael Pittman. Like, I can absolutely see that being the case. Not to mention, 11 other owners in your league will have interest in Brian Thomas. 5 or 6 might have interest in Michael Pittman.
Yeah, not to mention if 105 consensus-wise is Brian Thomas Jr. and you don't like Brian Thomas Jr. and you're like, I'll just trade down from 105 to 109, pick up an extra 2025 first and take Xavier Worthy, then you can just do that. To me, it's just, there's no need to pigeonhole yourself into now what is Michael Pittman worth as opposed to the 105, which is going to continuously accumulate value, whether people like Brian Thomas Jr. or not. They're going to like their number 4 wide receiver in the class. I personally prefer Xavier Worthy to Brian Thomas Jr. And if he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, that 105 is going to be worth a whole shitload of draft capital. And it's going to be something that you probably regret trading away for Michael Pittman straight up. So again, if you didn't like the idea of Brian Thomas Jr. at 105, pairing prospect to pick this early in the process is not the right thing to do anyways. What you should have done potentially is trade up to 102 or just stay the course, wait and see how that 105 develops and then trade the pick at that point if it's Brian Thomas Jr. Again, as we've talked about on numerous occasions, when you're a rebuilder, you are not in the buyer's mentality. You are in the seller's and value accumulation mentality. So again, don't look at these picks and assign players to them and decide whether or not you want them on your team. That's not what you should be doing at this point in time. When you do that is when you're actually on the clock ready to make a selection. And at that point, if you don't want that player, then you shop the pick and you say, does anybody want to come up for Xavier Legette here? He's on the board at the 202 and he went top 50 in the NFL draft. Not a huge Xavier Legette fan. You're thinking internally and you could punt that into future capital or a veteran player or whatever the case is. So the mindset of rebuilding, you got to stay the course, can't be impatient. There's no real need to stack up quarterback and wide receiver, especially when wide receiver is 26 years old, using a capital asset that would have been way better for your team situation, which is a young rookie wide receiver, or at least the pick that somebody would come and trade up for to pay a hefty price on that young rookie wide receiver.
Also, it also is counterintuitive to your goal next year. Like, if your goal is not to compete right away, why are you paying for Michael Pittman, especially knowing that Brian Thomas is the value accumulation piece and Michael Pittman's like range of outcomes is so stagnant? Like, could he be the wide receiver 16 in dynasty ranking? Sure. Could he be the wide receiver 10? Absolutely not. Can Brian Thomas be the wide receiver 8 if he has 1,000 yards as a rookie with the height, weight, speed profile he does? Absolutely. So I just don't understand making this moves, knowing that range of outcomes is more close for Michael Pittman, and his median range of outcomes is going to inherently worsen your odds of getting the 101 next year.
Yeah, it's a lesson that needs to be learned. So we're harping on it a lot because we hope you do. Again, your goal next year is to get a high pick. Buying production doesn't make sense to achieve that goal. Having a young wide receiver that can accumulate value does make sense to achieve that goal. So again, not a big Brian Thomas Jr. fan. That's fine. Trade down, trade up, trade the pick away altogether. That's when you make that decision. You don't do that the week of the Super Bowl or whatever, the time that you did it. But again, it's a learning lesson. We've all made mistakes in Dynasty. It's how you get better at Dynasty. We can pivot to Juanye's team here, which is a 10 team again. So big 10 team, or no, hold on. Is this a 16 teamer? This is a 16 teamer. Never mind. 16 team Superflex, which absolutely sounds like cruelty. Don't know why you're doing that. But anyway, 16 team Superflex. Thankfully, you got two good quarterbacks with Josh Allen and Dak Prescott. Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard, Khalil Herbert, those type of guys at running back. Justin Jefferson, Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins, Josh Downs, Deontay Johnson. Very good for a 16 teamer. 110, 111, 112, 202, which I guess is essentially like the 208 in a 12 team league or 206 in a 12 team league. And then it looks like you're missing a lot of your capital in the future. So I'm guessing that's how you got this roster, is that you traded away all your picks. But at the same time, you're in pretty good shape, given that it's a 16 teamer. I can't imagine you're one of the worst teams in your league, not to mention the fact that your wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end core are ready to compete this instant. So, I mean, this is the type of roster. You have the 110, 111, 112. I'd be interested in going after Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, Devon Achane, Travis Etienne, maybe even to Jonathan Taylor. Maybe you can package two of these picks together and get Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, I would be interested in trying to make this thing a contender. Basically, Juanye said his glaring need is obvious at the running back position and depth at the QB position. But to be honest, dude, like, nobody's going to have depth at quarterback, and they're going to be hard to come by anyway. So for me, in this situation, like, as much as it sucks to have just Josh Allen and Dak Prescott, maybe if like JJ McCarthy falls to 110, you just grab him there. But honestly, I think he'll probably go higher in this league format. Then he should be a 106, 107 type of pick at minimum. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this team? 110, 111, 112, maybe Bo Nix or Michael Penix makes sense there.
Yeah, if they find the ample draft capital, assuming they go first round. But realistically, with Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, like I'd be shocked in a 16 teamer if somebody had a better 1-2 punch at quarterback, having the quarterback one and a top 15 guy with Dak Prescott at the position. I mean, you're doing the math there. You have two of the top 16 options in a 16 team superflex where everybody has to start two. So if you're doing the math, man, like, you should have a significant competitive advantage to your league mates at both the quarterback one respective and the quarterback two respective positions in each starting lineup. The other thing too, you mentioned you need a running back. RB1 in the class is going to find his way with one of your picks, like whether it's the 110, the 111, the 112, whether that's Trey Benson, whether that's Jonathan Brooks. Hell, even if you wanted to double up if both got top 50 draft capital, I'm cool making that move, man, because for a 16-team league, start 9 league, like, your team is freaking loaded.
Yeah. And I mean, not to mention too, you have like depth at tight end, which may be a problem for other people. Like, Mark Andrews and Michael Mayer is all you really need. If people want to buy on Jake Ferguson because they're trying to contend and they need a competitive tight end, you could probably try and sell him off. If somebody liked what Tucker Kraft did at the end of the season, you could probably sell him off, maybe even straight for a running back if that's what you're looking for. But yeah, I mean, there is no real one way to address your running back position. Like I said, you could go after a veteran like Etienne, Jonathan Taylor, Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, Rachaad White, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs with some of those draft picks. Or, like Danny said, you could take some of the running backs in this draft class. Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard. Let's say you add Trey Benson and you trade for Rachaad White with the 111. You're ready to compete with that squad. Like, you have those 4 running backs and the rest of your core, your wide receiver core is good enough to compete. Your tight end core is good enough to compete. You have 2 good quarterbacks. Maybe if you really want to, you send away the 202 for Geno Smith, just so you have a good third quarterback. Then you can always do something like that as well. But for the most part, you're in a really good spot. And you do have a couple trades listed here on November 6th. He said, he made a trade here with T. Higgins, James Cook, and Christian Watson. That's what he sent away. He got DK Metcalf, Tony Pollard, and Josh Downs in return. He said he was trying to push some chips in to better his odds of getting to the championship, and then he was able to flip DK in the following trade. But looking at this November 6th trade, what are your thoughts on T. Higgins, James Cook, Christian Watson, and the 310 for Metcalf, Pollard, and Josh Downs?
Yeah, I'm cool with it. At the time you're making this move, obviously it sucks that James Cook outproduced Tony Pollard down the stretch, and now obviously has more market value. But at the time, I understand it. T. Higgins obviously banged up, not really playing the majority of the season. James Cook, that's before he broke out. Christian Watson dealing with the hammy injury, a little bit disappointing throughout the year. 310 in a freaking 16-teamer is worthless. To be honest,
like a late 4th round pick in a 12-teamer.
It's freaking nothing. And then meanwhile, DK Metcalf, obviously healthy at the time. Tony Pollard, despite being disappointing throughout the year, still had expectations he could be an RB1, including by both myself and you as late as November. And Josh Downs, this was at the time, I believe he had his hot stretch. He was valued as a fringe top 25 dynasty wide receiver. Cooled off down the stretch, but when you bought him, I understand the motive. So although now you might look back and say, ooh, I kind of wish I didn't do this. At the same time, I understand why you did it, and I'm not lamenting it too much, to be honest.
Yeah, not to mention you package DK Metcalf into CJ Stroud. Again, in November, it sucks that CJ Stroud and Josh Allen are a lot closer now than they were when you made this trade. This was a home run move in November, for sure. I definitely love what you did in November, getting Josh Allen. CJ Stroud obviously was a great quarterback and still is, and him and Josh Allen are not that far off in dynasty value, but I would still prefer Josh Allen, especially from a fantasy production standpoint. When it comes to your team, you're actually a competitive roster. We are going to take Josh Allen much higher in redraft leagues than we're going to be taking CJ Stroud. So I definitely love that move for you. And then in March, on March 12th, he sends away Justin Fields. Definitely excellent that you got off of him on March 12th. Gabe Davis and Antonio Gibson, and he received 3 first-round picks, 110, 111, 112, and the 202. So hell of a move that you made on March 12th. Moving on to Justin Fields, who's worth what now? The 202 in a 16-team Superflex?
Yeah, but how did you make this move even at the time? Like, I'm trying to
the person was betting on that either Justin Fields would stay with the Bears or he would get traded to like the Falcons. This would have been before Kirk Cousins had signed, something like that.
Yeah, but even so, okay, hypothetically, what is there a big difference between Gabe Davis plus Antonio Gibson versus the 202 here?
No, not really. I would probably prefer the 202 to be
honest. So then it's the 110, 111, 112 equated to Justin Fields. Even at the time where we're expecting him to be a starting quarterback,
he was worth what, the 109 or something?
Maybe
not two late ones. Like, he was definitely not worth 2 firsts.
Absolutely not worth 3.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, hell of a move, aged very, very well for you. At the very least, you can replace Justin Fields, hopefully, with JJ McCarthy or maybe Bo Nix or Michael Penix, get good draft capital, or you can trade one of those guys or one of those picks for a quarterback. But like I said, your team is kind of in need of running back production, and that 110, 111, 112 is almost a sweet spot in terms of the running backs that you can buy. Because like I said, if you want to just go spend the 111, get Saquon Barkley, spend the 112 and the 301 and get Josh Jacobs, you could just do that. And then at 110, maybe JJ falls to you. 110, you could send off for a third quarterback. Whatever you want to do, you have the flexibility now because of this excellent Justin Fields trade that you made.
Yeah, I mean, like, your team was already stacked, and then he just took that guy to the woodshed and made it even more stacked, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you're in a good spot. You have the flexibility to compete. You have the flexibility to be patient. Whatever you want to do, I think I would lean towards competing given the rest of your roster. So going out and spending some of those picks on rookie running backs, spending some of them on veteran running backs, that would be my first focus. Seeing maybe what you can do at the third quarterback spot, going after a cost-effective option like Baker Mayfield might be an option, going after Geno Smith might be an option. Even if Derek Carr is all you can get and it costs you the 202, which in a 16-teamer is really like the 207 or 206, then I'd be fine with doing something like that just to have a third quarterback. I'd be fine with that too. So David R is the last team that we're going to talk about here. I will get that one up on the screen. David's got his team here, which is a 10-team video, super flex, 1 PPR, Brock Purdy, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, a couple other guys there, quarterback, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Warren, Roshan Johnson, mainly like a 0 RB core here. Rashee Rice, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, Jahan Dotson, Gabe Davis, a couple other guys buried, Elijah Moore, Quentin Johnson, a couple guys with some upside, David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, Cole Kmet, Pat Freiermuth, 107, bunch of firsts in the future, bunch of seconds in the future. a bunch of picks in general. This is like the all depth team. Like everybody on your team is like, I would rather have them like Brock Purdy's your QB1, rather have him as QB2. DeAndre Swift, your RB1, rather have him RB2. Rashee Rice, your wide receiver 1, rather have him wide receiver 2. Like if you put across the board, Josh Allen, Bijan Robinson, Justin Jefferson, and Sam Laporta, this team would be loaded. But you have no studs, I would say.
The way I approach this, again, in a 10-team start 9 where you need studs, I'm either consolidating this down to the bone, or maybe you don't want to hear this. You finished 8th in 2023, third year in the league. I would strip this thing completely apart. You say bottom 4 finishers win top draft lottery. I'm assuming the bottom 4 get put into the lottery to potentially win the ultimate prize of the 101. You got to make sure that your team is either in position for that or consolidated down to the bone. Because realistically, man, like having a bunch of wide receiver 2-3s, having a bunch of RB1 or 2-3s, having, quarterback 2 and a couple quarterback 3s, like it's just not going to do it for me, man. Like you have to make a decision, tear this thing down or completely tear up. And given your situation, I would lean towards tearing it down because you have those 3 2025 firsts already banked.
Yeah, that makes some sense. It really all depends what you can tier up to, right? Like if Deshaun Watson plus Jahan Dotson and somebody likes QJ now that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are gone, if you can package those 3 guys together and get a better quarterback in a super flex league, maybe you could do that. Or maybe Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper gets you to, I don't know, Drake London or something. Like you need to do something to get studs. And if studs are not acquirable, like Danny said, you could then sell off Amari Cooper, sell off Deontay Johnson, sell off DeAndre Swift, sell off Deshaun Watson for more capital to be able to build this thing out through the draft and find your studs that way. So it's all going to depend on your league market. If your league market really, really values studs and they're impossible to go acquire, which most leagues are, then maybe you lean towards rebuilding and tearing this down a little bit further. But if the studs are actually acquirable, then you could always go that direction as well.
Yeah, because I mean, I got to keep it blunt with you. There's just a lot of mid on this roster. Like outside of Rashee Rice and maybe Brock
I'm not
Purdy,
shocked you finish 8th in this league.
Yes.
Let's just put it that way. Like this is exactly, I mean, it sounds like if you finished 8th and it's a 10-team league and it's a draft lottery for the bottom 4 teams, that means I guess you didn't have your own first this year either because you have the 107 and not a top 4 pick. So again, you really need to evaluate this thing and determine what your direction is, because right now it is a very directionless roster.
Yeah, like I'm gonna keep it blunt with you. Like, no offense, but like this is like just mid across the board. Like, there's just a whole lot of mid. Like Playboy Cardi, whole lot of red. You may as well retitle it whole lot of mid because that's what this roster is at this point. Good thing you have the 3 2025 first. If you had this roster and no picks banked up, I would be concerned. But the fact that you have the liquidity, extra seconds as well, like you did a good job acquiring the liquidity. It's just a matter of taking the whole lot of mid, the wide receiver 2s, the wide receiver 3s, the RB 2s, the RB 3s, the tight end 2s, the quarterback 2s, the quarterback 3s. Like take that and either sell off these parts for future capital, liquidity, extra first in 2025, 2026. Maybe you can get another first in 2024 if the right opportunity arises. Because outside of Rashee Rice and, like I said, Brock Purdy, like I'm not married to anything on this roster.
Yeah, and even those guys, I mean, if the value's right, Rice maybe not because we're a little bit higher on him than the market, but Brock Purdy too. Like, I mean, he's a good quarterback too to have, but it's possible that you can get a really good haul for him. So yeah, your studs are either going to come via trade, which will probably be unlikely. Maybe you can pick up 1 or 2 here and there, but for the most part, you're not going to revamp this roster and turn it into studs. I would imagine that would be really difficult to do. Most likely all your studs are coming in the future classes. So the nice thing, 107, 201, 203, 207, you're going to have some nice swings at some good players in this class. 107, you're guaranteed one of those top guys. Maybe you add Bowers to this team, or maybe you add Rome Odunze to this team. 201, 203, 207, maybe you walk away with Ladd McConkey, Troy Franklin, and Xavier Legette with those picks, and you got some upside at that point in time. But during the season, I mean, you have so many bodies on this roster that have value that you should be able to package 2-for-1s all day during the season. Gabe Davis plus Marvin Mims during the season, that gets you a random 2026 1 if you're lucky, maybe 2 2s or something like that. That's what I would be looking to do with this roster. Turn these mid assets into guys that can either be better assets in players or higher value assets in terms of picks.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head, especially in a 10-team start 9. Like if this was, a 14-team start 11, then I'd maybe say, okay, the depth actually matters. But in this league in particular, like having a lot of, middling players is just very counterintuitive, both to either trying to tank your team down or trying to actually win the whole thing.
Yeah, because you're not going to win with that roster, and you're probably also not going to tank with that roster because your roster is filled out with guys like Deontay Johnson who are going to give you like 11 points on most fantasy weeks. So definitely not ideal. Again, you got a lot of work to do. Not going to lie, David. But you do have some direction. Evaluate your league. Do you need to tear it down? Can you buy some studs? That's the direction that you need to head. So end of the video. If you guys made it here, leave a like down below. This was the 10-team video, apparently. If you want to comment that down below, subscribe to the channel. If you guys are new around here, again, we are really trying to get to some free submissions. Next week, maybe we'll do a double header next week, see if we can run through some free submissions that way. And we'll try and get to some teams. But again, if you do need advice right now, you really are stuck and you don't know what to do, head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use that promo code FSE. You can see all of our dynasty rankings there. Dynasty trade value charts are there. Our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide is there. So if you have questions relating to who you should buy, that's in the Dynasty Trade Value chart. Where we value your players, that's in the Dynasty Rankings. Where we value the rookie picks that you have, that's in the Dynasty Wall Street Journal 2.0. So all of your questions can be answered over there. And of course, when you sign up using promo code FSE, you'll also get a priority submissions to these episodes, Dynasty Decisions, and we'll have you on hopefully for the next video. So with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.